Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. I am here today with Wade Lightheart. Wade Lightheart is a three-time Canadian national all-natural bodybuilding champion who competed as a vegetarian, former Mr. Universe competitor, host of the Awesome Health podcast. Wade Lightheart is one of the world's premier authorities on natural nutrition and training methods. Having majored in sports science at the University of New Brunswick, he has authored numerous books on health, nutrition, and exercise, which have sold in over 80 countries. Wade also serves as an advisor to the American Anti-Cancer Institute and is the co-founder and president at Biohackers, a digestive and health optimization company. He's been in the health industry for over 25 years, coached thousands of clients, and is sought out by athletes and high performance oriented individuals worldwide for his advice on how to optimize their health and fitness levels. Biooptimizers has been featured on many of the biggest podcasts in the industry, including Bulletproof by Dave Asprey, Ben Greenfield's show, Barbell Shrugged, Melanie Avalon, and many others. Few alive have traveled further or crusaded harder on behalf of helping individuals transform their digestive health, wellness, and overall lives than Wade T. Lightheart. After competing in Mr. Universe and his health failing him following a competition victory, Wade began to search for answers. In the process, he learned so much about what makes digestion work, along with other principles that form what he called the awesome health system. This was such an informative podcast on all things health today. I enjoyed it so much. Wade was such a wealth of information, and he was talking about being a vegetarian and how he built muscle without all of the added protein. Talked a lot about digestion and how we're not always digesting all of the protein we may be eating. So we talked about digestive health, how important it is, why everyone needs it, why just because we might be regular, that might not be good. We might not have proper digestion just because we think, oh, I don't really need to supplement. We talked about why supplementation could be a game changer for people. We talked about probiotics. We talked about microbiome and why fiber is so important to having a healthy microbiome. We dove into so many topics today. This was so good. We talked about magnesium and how important it is for our overall health. So many facts, fascinating. It was so good today. For all my health nuts out there that want to biohack a better body, anti-aging, be healthier, this is the show for you today. I loved it. So without further ado, let's tune in. I'm so excited to have Wade Lightheart back on the Sisterhood of Sweat. Welcome.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, we had such a great conversation the last time. I'm going to have to link it in the show notes. So everybody, when you get the juice out of this episode, there's another episode that you can go listen to. And Wade also has his own podcast, The Awesome. I talked. I don't think you had that then when I had you on before. So give everybody the 411. Who are you, Wade, and what is going on?
Well, I've been asking that existential question most of my life, so we're still in the process of unpacking it. And how I show up in the world is I'm the co-founder of Biooptimizers. I was a former three-time national bodybuilding champion of Canada that went to the Mr. Universe on a dream after I had read Arnold Schwarzenegger's Education of a Bodybuilder and watched Pumping Iron and Conan the Barbarian. And as a 15-year-old had this vision of living in California and having a nutritional supplement company and competing in Mr. Universe. And all those things happened. But in the course of that, I discovered that my real passion in life was helping other people achieve their goals. So both Matt and I, my co-founder in the company, were personal trainers, and we fell in love with the process of people transforming their lives, coming from a place of disempowerment and moving into a place of empowerment, and then watching the transformation that ensued after. Because most people don't want to get, I used to ask this question of people, which was related to yours. People would come to me as a coach, as a fitness trainer, and I think this is concordant with almost everybody, thinking that they're trying to look a certain way or feel, or feel a certain way. It's the most common elements. If people just strip down to the essence. And I used to say, well, getting you into the condition that you want or where you want to be, that's a function of math. It's time, it's consistency and effort. That's a very clearly defined process. And if you're struggling with that, there's one of two problems. One, you either don't have the right system, or two, you have some unconscious programs that are keeping you from following a proper system. And so when people would work with me, I'd say, well, we're going to smash through both of those. But when you get to the quote unquote, the promised land that you think that being in shape or looking a certain way is going to give you, then we're going to find out what's really going on. And that could take a lot longer. And they're like, what do you mean? And I said, it's not looking a certain way that you want to be. It's what you think you are going to get from being that way. And they're not concordant with each other.
Oh my gosh, that is such an epiphany for everyone listening today.
Yeah. So we've been in the process of helping people transform their lives for well, now for me, it's been almost 3 decades and a couple decades with the company.
And I just found it so interesting. How did you get started into the space of this company, Biooptimizers, the idea, the vision, and now from where you started to where you are now?
Yeah. So Matt and I were personal trainers. We're 5 years difference in age. And we had sort of known each other from the small town that we were in the eastern part of Canada. He had kind of pseudo met me at a bodybuilding contest where he was a junior and I was a senior. I won that championship and it was his first one. And he can remember the whole excitement. Like, I was the guy at that point. And then I moved off to the West and developed my career as a personal trainer. And I came back a few years later. I would visit my family every year. And I saw that he had developed an extraordinary training business. And I said to him, he told me that he had this vision of going out West and moving to Central America. And I said, well, I can help you get out West. If you're doing this well here, you're going to do really well on the West Coast. And so I helped him get his start on the West Coast. And then a few years later, after I went to the Mr. Universe contest, he came to me and said, hey, we could start selling these courses online and make money online, teaching people about how to become better bodybuilders. And just for people who want to clarify something, bodybuilders are the original biohackers by a country mile. Like, they are overcoming evolutionary biases, genetic limitations, hormonal, like building muscle, like excessive amounts of muscle and reducing body fat is not something that we are designed to do evolutionary. So you have to hack your way out of it. So that became normal for both of us. And so we started this company. I didn't think he was making money online. He didn't think that I didn't even own a computer at the time. And I might be the only person in the world that had a successful online company without even owning a computer. That's all thanks to Matt. So we started working on this and coaching athletes who were making the vast array of mistakes that people make on a traditional fitness program, specifically if they're trying to reduce body fat to get to a certain condition. There's certain metabolic and nutritional strategies that the average nutritionist and coach are implementing, which will set you up for massive failure. And I had seen it. I had been through some of those myself. And so we decided that we would try and create a way to help people avoid the mistakes that, say, I had made and the thousands of people that we had interacted in that particular sport. And so we did. So we, over the next 4 years, we coached, I think it was like 15,000 clients, and we gathered this huge database, this clinical database of real world effectiveness, challenges, obstacles, both physical, psychological, hormone, all that sort of stuff. I also was running a holistic health clinic at the time in Vancouver, and Matt was developing a whole lot of online marketing skills. And so after 4 years, we realized that, okay, we were personal trainers that we loved. Then we had this burgeoning online business with, people in the fitness and bodybuilding industry. But our passion was with our clients, who are people who wanted to, contribute to the world in a bigger way, but were limited by their physicality. They were overweight, or they were struggling, or their brain didn't work right, or they couldn't have children, or whatever. And so we pivoted our company to start focusing on those type of solutions. We had kind of moved past the fitness world anyways, and that sort of cosmetic appeal, and it's really getting into health and performance optimization, cognitively, physically, these type of things. And so the company pivoted, and then a few years later, we rebranded it. And we had another business partner that helped us with that transformation. And the last 5 years, we've been doubling year on year, because we're kind of in the sweet spot. We've identified some key areas where we can really excel. And virtually everybody who's who in the industry are advocating for our products, because we build things that work.
I love it so much. So you found out, though, by kind of how I discovered many things, which since we last talked, in menopause, I had started ripping muscle from the bone. So I had several injuries, 3 back to back. And so I discovered the hard way what I had to change and course correct in my nutrition and what I was doing now because of lack of hormonal support.
Yep.
And so I love that your journey then also started from things going wonky after you dieted down for a show. And I would love for you to step into that and tell everybody that story and just your journey back to health.
Sure. I'm going to give a couple of specific incidences, because there was two times where I would say I pushed the absolute limit. So 1996 to 1998, I was following the traditional bodybuilding strategy. I used anabolics and things like that, and got myself to the 98 nationals, where I realized there's no, the end for this train doesn't end well. I could see what was happening in the industry. I looked at my own genetic capabilities. I saw who was leading. I was like, this is just an insanity. And I moved away from that and started cultivating a more esoteric practice. I got into Eastern philosophy and meditation. And, after a little grieving process where I went off the rails and did partying and all that sort of stuff that you do when you're young, and went totally crazy and had a great time, and don't regret it, but got myself in trouble. And so then I had a double factor. I've got my high performance bodybuilding site room that was collapsed. Then I went into this whole kind of party stage. And so I collapsed myself in that way. And then it was like, okay, now I really got into meditation and Eastern philosophy. And that's where I came back and said, hey, I want to do this sport, but I want to do this sport without hormones, without drugs, without any of the things. I want to do on a plant-based diet. Everybody told me that wasn't possible. But being someone that says, no, it's not possible for that person, but I'm not going to take on someone else's limitation. And so I cultivated a team of experts to help me. And then did some experiments. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. And it turned out I got to the Mr. Universe contest, but I made a key mistake. So this is a time of, 5 years removed from my first crash and burn, if you will, of just realizing there's a limit to just add more drugs, do more hormones, do more stuff, like, yeah, that sort of stuff. So I went this kind of totally organic way and thought I was doing things right. And I was trying to do this. Nobody was doing a plant-based. No one was doing it. Like, it was kind of crazy. And I made some critical mistakes. And after that Mr. Universe contest, I gained, get this, 42 pounds of fat and water in 11 weeks, right? Just totally system shut down. So any of your listeners out there, maybe you've gone through a stressful situation, a divorce, a pregnancy, something that pushed your hormonal system or your nervous system, or your energy systems, like your mitochondrial system. We didn't know all the nuances of that at the time, to the limit. And then you just get into this cascade of bad. You either get sick, or you get run down, or you get, some sort of physical condition, or you gain a whole bunch of weight, you get brain fog, you can't remember. It shows up as different ways, but there's fundamentals that we learned. And when I crashed and burned, I was like, I don't get this. I've got Spartan-like training. I got Spartan discipline. I've got the best coach in the world. I've been in the Mr. Universe. I'm the cosmetic idea. What the hell's going wrong here? I'm supposed to be doing everything right, and everything's gone wrong. And I met a doctor. His name was Michael O'Brien. And he was like in his 70s. He was the picture of health. He was so vibrant. He could look right through this guy. And he started giving me all these things. We went to one of his big long seminars, and he was just shattering all these myths, or these belief systems that we called science or factuality. And I'm looking at him, I was like, well, obviously he knows something that we don't know. I've never seen a guy look like this at that age.
How old was he?
He was in his late 70s, and he was still to this day one of the most vibrant human beings I've ever met in my entire life. And I asked him, I said, Dr. O'Brien, what's going on here? And I kind of gave him the whole sad story I just gave you. And he's like, you've learned to build the body from the outside in. I'll show you how to build the body from inside out. And he instructed Matt and I to look at our digestive health system, the role of enzymes in over 25,000 different pathways inside the body, and how damaging one of those pathways could disrupt a whole cascade of things. He looked at our microbiome, the types of food that we're eating in a performance-based style for an external outcome was actually compromising our immune system, our hormonal system, and our metabolic system. And these are where I ran into problems. So we went on his program, and it was very expensive and thorough. And 6 months later, I got my physique back, but I felt like I never felt in my life. And that's when we started advocating this in our company and started developing these processes. And eventually we now have a university in Croatia at Birch University. We've got, I think now 13 different people, PhDs in microbiome, that kind of look at how does the role of our inner world determine our outer world. And we're finding some striking and remarkable things. We live in a symbiotic relationship with bacteria, for example. We think of bad bacteria as bad, all bacteria is bad, but no, we have hundreds of strains that produce key nutrients, antioxidants. They influence hormones, they influence our neurochemistry. And modern diets today, or modern performance diets today, like I want to lose this much weight for the wedding, for example, or I want to do this, oftentimes are setting up changes in our internal world that is going to be very hard to overcome without specialized science. And because of the mistakes I made, I had to go figure this out. And then once I figured out, then we had to figure out a bunch of other people that had kind of different problems, but along the same line. And then over the last, I guess, since 2004, when we started the company, we've just dealt with thousands and thousands of people that said, well, you don't understand my problem. It's different. Well, maybe it's different, but the fundamentals are the same.
But the fundamentals are the same. I love that.
Yeah.
So so I was trying to explain digestion to one of the girls in my studio today, because she thought, well, I have enzymes, but I don't really need to use them because I'm regular every day. And dispel that myth.
Sure. There's 5 stages of digestion. Taste, touch, smell the food, sensory stuff prepares the nervous system. You'll start to read the salivary enzymes called ptyalin and stuff out of the body, which have a metabolic cost. We can get into that in a minute. Then you put the food in your mouth and you masticate it and chew it. Okay, so that's kind of like the first stage. And then the food goes down the esophagus and into the upper cardiac portion of the stomach. And for the first 30 to 60 minutes, the enzymes present in the food are supposed to break that food down. And then hydrochloric acid comes in, and then in the next stage, food drops down the next stage, hydrochloric acid comes in, that disinfects the food, wipes out any parasites, changes the acidity so that some enzymes become deactivated while others become activated. And then once that process is complete, the food will then be buffered by minerals, goes into the intestinal tract where your microbiome, this is the good, well, the collection of all the bacteria, if you got good, bad, and ugly. And these bacteria will now convert that food into either building blocks for your body or energy units for your body. Or if it's bad bacteria that get a hold of it because you have some sort of imbalance, it'll start producing a variety of toxins. And then the other thing is if you have too many chemicals in your diet, like glyphosate, for example, is a great example, which is on like everything. And like take oats, right? If you don't have glyphosate-free oats, and that's a big commonality in the bodybuilding fitness world, have your oats and egg whites every day, or your oats and protein or whatever. Well, often you'll be adding a whole bunch of glyphosates that'll disrupt that microbiome and disturb how these bacteria convert your food. It's like you don't have the trucks now to deliver the food to the cells. And then the final phase is the elimination phase. And that's a result of peristaltic contraction. It's a smooth contraction of smooth muscle, which moves that food all through the body. So spinal alignment can influence that. Hydration levels.
Sure. Yeah.
Most people are almost always permanently dehydrated. And chemical agents that make just, it could be plastics in your house, it could be fluoride or chlorine in your water, it could be a vast array of chemicals, which there's a huge variance in how people will respond to that based on genetics, total levels of toxicity, and their microbiome. And what we do is we help provide solutions around those specific components that have cascading effects that you wouldn't mention. So people, for example, if they have their lipase system is off, which could be a gallbladder issue or an incomplete lipolytic profile, they'll often have skin conditions. Someone who doesn't break down proteins properly or has a lot of bad bacteria in their guts might find that they're more prone to depression, or they're more prone to anxiety, right? Somebody that has parasites, for example, they picked up on a trip to Southeast Asia or down to Mexico or something, like they've got parasites in the system, which are causing them to have uncontrollable food cravings or deep skin conditions, or maybe they have a fungus in their environment, some sort of mold in their house, which is disrupting them. Maybe they have high levels of some sort of heavy metal, which is allowing some bacteria to grow and some not to grow. All of these things are contributing factors, and you can figure them out and take them. You kind of go through a list and you start with the basics, and then you start specializing until you correct them. And every single condition of disease and health is a result of the external and internal patterns of living that a person is going through.
I worked a lot with Ann Louise Gittleman, who is the first lady of nutrition, and she's written over 30 books, and I collaborated on the Fat Flush for Life. And one of the things that she would always say to me is she didn't ever leave home without her HCl with ox bile, like her hydrochloric acid. And well, because she said it was the biggest defense against parasites. And so what is your take on the whole, like, why do we need to supplement, especially over the age of 40? Why should we be supplementing with enzymes and HCl? And why do people need this so much?
Yeah, so if you go to one of the foremost experts on this, he wrote a book called Enzyme Nutrition, Dr. Edward Howell, and Food Enzymes for Health and Longevity. And so when he looked, I'm going to back this up so I can get the whole concept. One of the, because there's anti-aging research that's coming out of.
I love all that. I eat that up.
Now there's correlations, and I'm going to show you the correlations that's led me to come to the conclusions that I've had. And we've been able to see this happen in the real world. So there's double-blind studies, and then, which are clinical trials. And then there's clinical trials of what's happening in the world. And they're not always the same, because in a clinical trial, you can't control all the parameters like a double-blind study. And a lot of double-blind studies don't attest for genetic variants or microbiomes or things like that. So all things considered, here's what we've learned. Dr. Howell, the godfather of enzymes, determined that when he tested all these different animals that ate an enzyme-rich diet live longer than animals that didn't. And animals that ate less lived longer than animals who ate more. And what's interesting about that, you go, well, what's the correlation? Well, the correlation is the more food that you eat, the more enzymes your body has to manufacture to digest, absorb, utilize that food. And the reason is because humans are the only species on the planet that cooks its food. And when you cook food, pasteurize food, irradiate food, all the things that we get our food, you destroy the enzyme content of that food. Okay, gives it storability. You can eat more calories, which have other benefits, but you now require your body to convert smooth muscle and striated muscle into enzymes to break down that food. And there's a limit to that. Howell called it your food enzyme bank account. And that's why animals and humans categorized who eat less tend to live longer, because they preserve this. There's over 25,000 enzymatic reactions in the human body that you require. Everything from thinking to blinking requires enzymes. And if you have a bank account and it's this much, but you're spending 70% on digesting your food, you don't have you only have 30%, and maybe you need 70% to run your brain, run your liver, run your organs, run the conversion of your hormones. And so what happens is you're playing this catch-up game, and what looks like liver dysfunction or gallbladder dysfunction or brain fog in different people actually just says, I don't have enough enzymatic capacity to do this. Second thing, hydrochloric acid is an acid that's produced from proper hydration. Most people are dehydrated. Second, as we get older, it tends to diminish over time. Part of that is due to the buildup of H. pylori, which can counteract some of those effects. So HCl is the defense mechanism against any pathogen coming into the body. That's why it disinfects, it kills parasites, it kills bugs, it kills bacteria, it kills viruses, does all that stuff. And it changes the pH to ensure that we break down all our food. So, and then probiotics, we live in an antibiotic world. And the PhD who runs our lab in Croatia, Monja, she says, we're 10 to 20 years away from living in the post-antibiotic world. Antibiotics have saved millions of lives. Well, many of us are here because of it, because of the advent of antibiotics. But we've used them so prevalently in both the medical situation, our cleaning, sanitary conditions, and the farming production area, is that we've built a whole array of antibiotic resistant bacteria, which are running wild in people and causing a host of problems. And it's to the point where one of my friends, who's a vascular surgeon from Harvard, he put the first stent in the body. He said that today surgeries come ahead by 40, like what they can do with surgery today to where he started is remarkable. He goes, the problem is, he goes, today, 50% of the patients who are dying in surgery aren't dying from the surgery, they're dying from infection from the surgery after, because of this post-antibiotic world. So what we're trying to do is address natural solutions using these elements, enzymes, hydrochloric acid, probiotic, to bolster the evolutionary components of our body that allows us to thrive in the environments that we find ourselves in. And we've done a good job doing it. And then of course, after that, you want to be better. We work on nervous system and brain function and all these other areas.
We were talking about depression earlier, and your gut is the biggest place for all of your neurotransmitters chemically to produce. And they call it the second brain. So that to me would make sense then why it's so important to have a good flora, good microbiome, the probiotics, and all of that to help. Don't you think that goes a long way then to helping people that suffer from depression?
Yeah, and depression is at an epidemic level in our society. And so why is that? Well, I think there's a couple of things. I think one, isolation from our close communities. We evolved to be in groups of 80 to 150 people. And nowadays we have a lot of loose connections and few deep connections, thanks to the advent of technology. So that's one thing. Number two, our food supply has altered radically. So we don't get the natural enzymes and probiotics present that helps us digest, absorb, and utilize the food. And the third thing is chemical agents have often disrupted these microbiomes so much so that we can't, even if we're on a perfect diet, and a lot of people have experienced this, right? For example, they're like, oh, I can't eat all those greens. I can't break it down. It makes me feel bad. Or one type of diet advocacy is because it's not the right diet for them. They don't have the digestive capability to break it down. And it creates another set of problems from toxicity from that diet. So undigested food is the biggest toxin there is, because now that's going to feed the bad guys and produce a whole bunch of problems. So like Matt, my business partner's on a ketogenic diet, loves it, follows it, does that. I'm on a plant-based diet. Like, we're as far apart on the spectrum as you could get, because we're dietary agnostic. We're helping people select what's right for them based on what we can observe and what we can test for. And that's why there's no need to, is keto better than plant or plant better than paleo or whatever the story happens to be, the latest fad. These are snippets of information that's creating dietary tribalism to make people have a sense of connection to a set of ideas, which will eventually fall apart as they get closer and closer to what's right for them. So what we're teaching is, let's go with first principles, and let's tune our bodies, which we now have the ability to do based on our own unique set of genetic and environmental conditions, and account for that. And that's what's exciting. It's really fun. It can changes the conversation and actually brings together people as opposed to separates them into tribes.
Oh my goodness. And what you said about connection, that was probably the biggest thing that I found during the pandemic. I mean, I basically opened my biggest gym and then expanded it during the pandemic, which probably wasn't what most people would consider optimal. But what I discovered was that people were hungry for connection when the gym had to be closed for 3 to 4 months. And so I just provided that connection. I connected everybody through Zoom, and I let them have their Zoom microphones open, and we had workouts and class, and we were all talking back and forth. And I felt, I think, more connected than ever before, because we were just making the most out of being like not feeling connected to people because you had to stay in your home. And so what you said about connection, having a deeper connection, I think if people can find a way during these hard times to try to foster that deeper connection with people, you'll be surprised at how your business could still thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'll move towards, we really got two kind of emerging themes, is that, do we move to a more centralized authoritarian society, or do we move to a more decentralized people-based society? And I'm on the latter side of the equation. We don't know how that's going to shell out over the next few years. I think we're going to be very disruptive, and that's why I think building local community for food support, for emotional support, and for lifestyle support is the key moving forward, because it's really hard to overcome our evolutionary nature.
I love that. That was really good. Well put. And I'm on the latter too. So, but wherever you fall on the spectrum, I think it is very important. It's always like, I used to always think it was about the workout that I brought. I'm all about bringing a hard workout. And then one day I really got it. I'm like, no, it's connection first. The people that come to me, the connection first, the workout was really secondary. And so I love this conversation. So how do you, like with the probiotics, the digestive health, and eating vegetables, how in the world did you build all that muscle? That's what inquiring minds want to know. How in the world did you bodybuild, but you weren't eating steak and you weren't eating all this protein and well, meat protein?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. First, one of the things, first off, I think I was born a contrarian. Anytime I hear any kind of information or stuff, I'm always like, well, that's true. And I like the exceptional. I like the unusual. And then I also I have no problem challenging what people believe as truths or norms. And if you look at science, the idea of the scientific method is always to retain a level of healthy skepticism, even though I would call myself a more emotionally driven person, a more passionate person. And so I'm always balancing between my own emotional energy and that cognitive
I can totally relate to that.
Assessment. And so we would notice with different people that they would start increasing their protein in training and their weight would go up, but then they would kind of hit a limit and that would be it. And then they would try to increase their protein, but I noticed the physiques often suffered. They started getting distended bellies. There was inflammatory conditions. They had joint pains. And I was like, okay, so are they really digesting this food? Like how much? So if I eat 1 gram per pound of body weight, which is common elements, what's the chances that I get that whole 1 gram? And if you talk to professional bodybuilders, they'll tell you the hardest thing to do is to eat enough food to support the gains that they make, whether they're using anabolics or not. And at the highest end, many of them are, to kind of push that limit. And so we can learn from that, right? Anabolics just increase protein transcription and allows people to build abnormal amounts of muscle. Okay, but there's a conversion they still have to go through this digestive conversion. And when you talk to bodybuilders, many would come with bowel conditions. They would develop these things, calcification of the tissues, all sorts of brain fog, all sorts of skin issues, which indicated what I learned from Dr. O'Brien is, they're not actually breaking down the food. So then I went on this experiment. Well, I'm eating 250 grams of protein a day to compete at the Mr. Universe contest. How much of that am I really getting? Can I increase the absorbability of the amount of protein I'm consuming? And what would the results be? What's the sweet spot? And I experimented going down to as low as 50 grams. And it turned out that I worked really well at 85 grams a day when I was taking my enzymes, my hydrochloric acid, and my probiotics. That required radical shifts in my nutrition. And really, today, I find if I can hit 100 grams, that seems to be the best for me now, as I'm just catching up on 50 pretty soon. So what did we learn? Well, you're not what you eat, you what you digest, absorb, and utilize. And so it took me 4 years to master it. In 2007, I came back eating 85 grams of protein a day, won my contest at my national championships in 3.5 weeks of training, like no time. I just got in shape really quick, and I compressed 3 months of training into that 3.5 weeks. If you can imagine, I did all this biohacking. I was in hyperbaric chambers. I was in red light. I was in frequencies. I was taking 100 enzymes a day. I was at like super physiological levels of biohacking components. And I was able to do something that no one said was possible. Went to the world championships again, did better. I finished 13th the first time, 5th the second time. I have no business being a bodybuilder anyways. And genetically, and I didn't have the weight gain after. I didn't gain all the weight. I didn't get puffy. I didn't crash and burn because my digestive system was optimized. And at that stage, I was like, you know what, we've got this down. And that's when I began writing books and taking that technology into other areas, which was a passion of mine, both in the health field and the performance optimization. And that's how our brand became known as how we can do it. So each person, if they're making that switch, they're going to go through their own adjustment field. And now we're seeing the latest longevity research it's the buildup of protein in the cellular matrix that is what creates to the aging process. And so if we can decouple that through good digestive health, time restricted eating or calorie restricted eating over a long period of time, and then I would say cellular nutrification by looking at your genetics, looking at your diet, looking at the things that you have a challenge absorbing, what are your genetic predispositions, and then offsetting them using what we call biological optimizing technology, now you can cultivate a specific routine for you. You start with the basics and you just keep getting more and more specialized as you go along in your journey. And that's where we're at now. And it's a lot of fun.
So what did you learn as a vegetarian that is applicable to all diet styles?
Yes. So there's two, I think, key elements to successful dieting, regardless of what you're doing. And that is, number one, satiety. You've got to be able to feel full so that you don't overeat calories, because we are in a world that will guarantee that you overeat. The advertising, the sheer amount of calories that you can consume on one little mental break will destroy a week's work. Okay, that's number one. And number two is, most people offset satiety with protein in the fitness industry. You eat regular feedings of protein because it burns a lot of calories to break it down, and it keeps a high satiety. So that's the truth within the 1 gram per pound of body weight. It keeps the metabolism cooking. It's not necessarily converting that to muscle that you want, but the metabolic cost of digesting that is increasing your calorie burn. So when you go to a plant-based diet, you typically drop the protein content. Now, there's a problem with this, and you see this happening with vegetarians. Number one, they don't make enough peptide chains to make their brain operate properly. So they get kind of the spacey, vegetarian kind of thing, because their neurochemistry is not quite right. And the second thing is, if they want to get that fitness type result, they've got to jack up the fiber. Okay. And the reason why is fiber is even more calorie consuming than protein to break down, but it has a secondary benefit, and that it feeds the good bacteria in your body that allows them to manufacture all of the components. And so by using a high fiber diet and low protein, you're kind of getting the benefits of a high fat diet and low protein that ketogenic people do, because ketogenic are keeping the protein low so they don't get a whole bunch of variance in the blood sugar, and they're using fats for satiety. And a bodybuilding diet is usually higher in carbohydrates and higher in proteins and lower in fats, because they're using protein as the driver and carbs as the energy cycle. Ketos are using fats as the energy cycle, and vegetarians are going to use carbs as the energy cycle, but they're balancing it like fiber so they don't balance their So all three styles of eating are leveraging different components to keep the basically satiety, blood sugar stability, and calorie restriction, so that they burn more than they eat over a period of time, so that you can consistently lose body. It's not what you can do in a month, it's what you can sustain in a year. And when you get this and understand this and then apply this, now you can get to a weight and stay at that weight for as long as you desire, as long as you follow those principles.
That's a definite tweetable. Not what you can do in a month, but what you can sustain for a year. I love that. And so my question then goes with this biome product that you guys have. Yep. The BioOptimizer, the inulin and the everything in here. You have fiber in here, because I think people, the automatic question that came to my mind is what fiber sources. But this really makes it easy. I literally have been putting this in like what I drink in the morning, and
I eat it out of the can. I just take a scoop and put it in my mouth first thing in the morning. It's amazing.
It tastes good.
Well, there's two things that's going on there. Number one, it contains IgY Max, which is an extract from egg yolks, which repairs leaky gut. So Harvard just came out with a paragraph, a publication that said everybody in North America has some level of leaky gut. That's because of glyphosates, chemicals, fluoride, chloride, chemical agents, heavy metals, all this stuff that's in our food or air. Can't avoid it. And when you have leaky gut, you have undigested food leaking into the blood system, which creates an immune system response that causes inflammation, puffy eyes, brain fog when you wake up in the morning. I need 10 coffees to wake up. I'm tired and don't have
I don't drink coffee.
Well, I'm just
anymore. I cut it out.
Yeah, what a lot of people are doing in order to counteract the coagulation of the blood from proteins. So Biome Breakthrough it fixes the leak in your intestinal tract. And then it also has the strains of probiotics that not only repair that one cell layer, essentially it is, they repair that, but we actually added the fiber types that feeds them. Because when you take a bacteria culture, you have to learn which fiber types that bacteria requires in order to live and to thrive and to colonate. Most probiotics just throw a little bit of a mishmash of maybes in there. They don't have a team of researchers. Like we literally send this to the lab. We try all these different types of fibers to see which ones the bacteria grow on. We give them different vitamins and different nutrients to see what happens and what they produce. And it's fascinating because you can get variances of 10 to sometimes over 1,000 times. We just did an experiment the other time that had a 1,200% increase by adding one tiny element to our product. And it didn't matter the dose. The dose wasn't, the ones that had that type, that cofactor made 1,200% difference and the results of that bacteria's functioning.
I love that. I love that so much. So moving on to this, you talked about blood sugar.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's one of the reasons I gave up coffee too, because it does spike your insulin level.
Yeah,
most
people
people
are shocked
don't know
by that, right?
Yeah. So that was a problem I was having was the blood sugar. So I love this product. I've been taking it every day. Explain to everybody why it's good to have something like this and how important it is to keep your blood sugar stable.
It is. I think blood sugar stability is probably the most important factor for long-term health for a couple of reasons. And we have a lot of simple carbohydrates in the world, and many people are predisposed for type 2 diabetes, blood sugar dysregulation. That's what increases fat stores. That's what increases brain dysregulation. It also uncontrolled eating, swings in mood. This is just, you go down the list. It's really, really bad. And going back to what we talked about diet-wise is you want to stabilize that blood sugar. Now, if you're someone who maybe had a lot of sugar as a kid, maybe haven't watched your diet for very long, when you start to diet, it takes a while to kind of switch out that roller coaster. So for example, Matt's wife, his mother lost limbs because of diabetes. His wife was headed down that road. He was desperate. So we were like, well, we need to find a blood sugar stabilization product so people can stay on the dietary process that they might be engaged in. So we literally compiled a laundry list of several different types of blood sugar regulating stuff. Things that had glucose transporters, things that actually mimicked insulin, and then things that helped manage your blood sugar overall. And there was 13 different items that we came on, and we tested it over and over and over again with literally our testing team pricking their fingers 12 times a day to get blood sugar ratings. And we came up with this, and for most people, it'll drop their blood sugar 20 to 40%. So not something that you would take while fasting. You take it during your normal diet, or if you're going to eat a high carbohydrate meal, like a social situation, hey, you're going out with the family on the weekend, you're going to probably have too much carbs. Take a few caps before you go, and then you don't have that crash the next day that, how you go out, have a whole bunch at night, food one night, things, and you wake up in the next morning, you're tired, you're groggy, and then you go out and have a giant breakfast because you're famished. You're not really famished from a food standpoint. Is your blood sugar drops so deep is that your body's trying to get it up because you released too much insulin the night before. So the idea is we start to smooth out that roller coaster ride that so many people are stuck on.
Oh my goodness. My brain, as you talk, my brain runs over so many things. And I learned the hard way not to take this while I was fasting, because I took it and I was fasting. And I thought, wow, I feel a little strange. And so it makes sense though. And then I thought about it and I was like, yeah, I'm probably not supposed to take this while I'm fasting.
No.
So I learned that. So another question I have then, well, back to the leaky gut. What you were saying about leaky gut. I discovered through trial and error that, you know, most of us have it over a certain age,
Yeah.
that we have some semblance of it. And so I started taking another product, and I actually really love this. I love the way this is working for me, and the taste as well. I like the chocolate, but what I learned was that my stomach was just blowing up. Well, because I had leaky gut.
Yeah.
And so I think knowing some of the symptoms of the bloating, the brain fog, you know, all that, and is your stomach blowing up right after you eat? It could be cortisol, but it could also just be the leaky gut. So I just love using a product like this that helps to straighten out that situation without a lot of, you know, having to figure out what I need to take. And then
My mom swears by it. My mom swears by it. She's a
okay.
glutenaholic. She just eats gluten all the time, which is really damaging because oftentimes it's full of glyphosates. So
I
she
mean, I
loves it.
just learn, you know, I study, I research, I take school during the pandemic. Like, I love and eat up all of the facts about our body, our health, and what can we do. That's why I do think it's so important to be able to supplement. So with the Gluten Guardian,
Mhm.
what if we're not eating gluten? Did we not need it then?
No, not necessarily.
Okay,
Gluten
that's what I
Guardian,
wanted to
yeah,
know.
gluten. Two things. If you're very sensitive to gluten, you would take these before you go to a restaurant because there's a lot of gluten contamination. Second thing, it'll also work on
And everything.
different types of milk-based proteins. So oftentimes people have trouble with milk for whatever reason. That gluten enzyme product is dipeptidyl peptidase 4, which is the enzyme that actually breaks down gluten. About 20% of the population has it. The rest of people don't. Kind of like lactose, so people don't have it.
Yeah, I don't do well with gluten at all.
Yeah, so that's a product that you can use in social situations, or if you're subjected to that, as a simple way out of it. We developed enzymes like Capex for a ketogenic diet. We have Masszymes, which is an overarching kind of all-in-one. We have Vegzymes, which is people on, you know, have trouble with plant foods. So when you go to our site or check things out, you can kind of go through there or talk to one of our agents, which are trained extensively, so that they can help you select which is the right enzyme for you. So you want to start with your stack. We call it a stack. Your base enzyme that you take before you eat, some hydrochloric acid, you know, and there's a quick test for hydrochloric acid, just so people want to do. Take a half teaspoon of baking soda, stir it up in 4 ounces of water, drink it on an empty stomach. If you burp within 5 minutes, you're good. If you don't burp within 5 minutes, you don't have enough hydrochloric acid, and that means that
I love that. That is such a great tip for the listeners. I love that.
Simple test. So do those things.
You know, if you took too much HCl, if you feel a little burning, too much burning and acid in your stomach. And so that's another tip that I learned from Anne Louise Skittleman.
Yeah. And then you pick a probiotic that's right for your system, either that leaky gut, Cognibiotics, or P3OM, depending on what you want to do.
So you have this product, Masszyme.
Yep.
Like, it's just
that's been our standard. That's been our catch-all. It's enzymes for the masses. There's 17 different enzymes. Basically, it'll digest a steak. We have a video on it where we do it. It'll turn a bowl of oatmeal into water in 2 minutes.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, it's remarkable. That is a kind of the all-encompassing enzyme formulation that'll break down just about anything. And then the other ones are specialty enzymes that we've developed for different types of diets.
So I know how important it is to digest your food, because also, you know, an indicator, you know, indicating like around my middle, like if I all of a sudden I don't have abs and I have all this fluff, it is an indication that I'm not, and I'm also not digesting, I'm not eliminating. You store what you don't get rid of. And so I just think really emphasizing to people today how important it is with digestion, and that over the age of 40, we're not making HCl the way we had before. We don't have as much hydrochloric acid. We don't have as much enzymatic properties in our gut. And so unless you're really following, biohacking, because our food is just not what it used to be. So I just think products like this are so important, like the Massime, the HCl, and then the Gluten Guardian was also, it breaks down the properties, like you said, of like gluten, of maybe some milk, like people are lactose intolerant. So I just think it's really important to really stress this to people, that it could be a game changer for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that magnesium breakthrough that you guys have created.
Yep.
So my husband has had a few heart issues, and been to many cardiologists, and he has PVCs, and this product right here has really, really slowed down his PVCs. And your heart, it's really, besides for your muscle, besides for your stress, it's very good for the heart as well. And so this was a little tidbit that we recognized after we started taking the product and we started doing our homework a little bit.
Dr. Sanjay Gupta, not the one on CNN, but one in the UK, who is one of the leading cardiologists in the world, said that 25% of his patients resolve their issues by proper supplementation of magnesium for various heart conditions. You can check out he has got a great site on that. And Dr. Sinatra, the Sinatra protocol, recommends 800 milligrams of magnesium a day. Virtually, I think I've had 5 vascular surgeons in the last year on my podcast, all advocating magnesium for heart conditions. And it's the array of benefits. There's about 600 different functions that magnesium is a precursor or trigger element, essential component to, and we just can't get it in our soil. We can't absorb it, we can't get it. And we have 7 different types of magnesium, because different magnesiums are absorbed by different parts of the body. And so we combine it into one product, and it's been a runaway bestseller, because so many testimonials of so many different things: better sleep, feeling more calm, less anxious.
That's what I like it for.
Yeah, that's what I like it for. I like it because it helps me feel calmer and sleep better. So
yeah, it is. And I mean, it was just amazing. He was just like he was so excited, just like doing a little jig, because it's been a real scare. And so that's just been amazing for us, just to discover how much the magnesium was good for the heart. But you're also losing magnesium if you're working out, or if you're overly stressed.
The more you sweat, the more stimulants you take.
And this is the sisterhood of sweat, after all.
Yeah, exactly. So check it out. Of course, all our products, for anybody that tries them, we have a 365-day money back guarantee. We'll even pay the price of the shipping if for whatever reason it doesn't work. We have a great staff that can give you the information you need to take it properly based on whatever's going on for you. And if they don't know what that question is, that question goes directly to me. All the questions have been answered by myself personally in regards to that. So I think we've got a repertoire of over 8,000 questions that have already been asked, and most people's are in them. And if it isn't, I'll answer it directly myself. So
where can they go again to get Biooptimizers? And we do have the code SWEAT10. So in the show notes, make sure you go for the link, and I'll say it at the beginning of the podcast. But we have 10% off for you guys. So where do they go again to get this?
Yeah, just go to like magbreakthrough.com or bioptimizer.com, put SWEAT10 in, get 10% on anything. If you load up on larger quantities, you'll get an even bigger discount, which is great. And it's just a delight to be able to serve people, and let us know how it works for you. I read the testimonials out every Monday morning on our team meeting, because that's what motivates us to see people's lives change. It's very exciting, and it's just a delight to do it.
And I love that. I love that so much. And inquiring minds want to know, are you ever going to do another bodybuilding show, or are you done?
What's the word they say? Old bodybuilders never die.
I know. It's just, I can't rule it out.
It's you don't know. There's pressure elements that are pushing me, because I've just been doing 50 weeks to 50, so I'm in pretty good shape right now. So there's elements pushing me, but I don't know. I have a
I
long
know,
way.
it's just that thing. It's like it's like you can't say, like, even though I had several injuries doing fitness routines, um, I'm going to go back and do a show in November, but
Well,
it's not going to be fitness, but I can't rule out that I might do it again. So I totally love the quote that you said about the old bodybuilders, because I feel that way as well. Well, I have so enjoyed you today. You're such a wealth of information. And I feel everyone is going to be better educated about how, and armed with some knowledge, how to better take care of their health. So I just thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on today, and really enjoyed this.
thanks so much. It's my pleasure. Take care. Have a great day.
And thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of the Sisterhood of Sweat. And as always, keep on keeping on.